Hey there, church. Pastor Mike here. So good to be with you. Hope you're having a great day and a wonderful week. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I would be doing a brief overview of the book of Obadiah. Due to its brevity, I thought, and because of our schedule on Sunday mornings, that we would do it, we would cover the book this way instead of taking a Sunday morning to unpack the book of Obadiah as we continue in our sermon series, The God Who, all throughout the year. If you're not a part of Whitefield, we have been studying each and every book of the Old Testament. We've been reading through the Old Testament as a church and preaching through each and every book in the Old Testament this year, and we're kind of winding down as we're in the minor prophets. And today we want to look at the book of Obadiah, which is the shortest book in the Old Testament. And what's unique about the book of Obadiah is that unlike the other prophecies and prophets in the Old Testament, Obadiah is not specifically speaking toward the nation of Israel. It's not speaking toward the northern kingdom known as Israel or the southern kingdom known as Judah, those two comprising the entire nation of Israel. No, Obadiah speaks out against Edom. Now, Edom, if you trace back the nation's roots, you'll trace it all the way back to a man named Esau, who has a brother named Jacob. If you remember that, Abraham had Isaac. Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. And Jacob and Esau, they didn't get along, and that's putting it mildly. And Jacob would later be known and renamed as Israel and would comprise the nation of Israel. His 12 sons would. And Esau would later be known Edom, or his descendants would be known as the Edomites. And not only did Jacob and Esau not get along, but their descendants did not get along as well. And there's generations of this turmoil, and Edom is geographically, it's a neighbor of Judah and Israel. And so what had taken place over time and during the writing of Obadiah, which scholars dated around the time of the Babylonian exile, which would be around 586 BC, what took place in that time was the nation of Edom took advantage of the situation of Babylon coming in and exiling the nation of Israel. They saw an opportunity and they began to pillage and plunder some of the Israelite cities. They began to abuse some of the refugees that were being exiled, and they even killed some of them. And so Obadiah unpacks some of this that's going on, and he reveals the God who watches over his children. And you say, well, now why would you arrive at that? Well, if you think about the turmoil, the unrest, the chaos that the people of Israel would be experiencing at this time as they're being exiled out of their homeland, and they're being abused by what would be their cousins, the Edomites. And I'm sure they're wondering, the thought probably crept in, is God seeing this? Is he noticing what is taking place, that we are being taken advantage of, that we are being abused, that some of us are actually being killed? And sometimes that thought crosses our mind, doesn't it? Is God actually seeing the things that are taking place? Is he seeing the suffering that we're going through? And he absolutely is. He sees those who are doing it right. He sees those who are doing it wrong. And if you'll notice there in Obadiah verse 10, God calls them out and makes known what he is angry with Edom about. Verse 10, because of the violence done to your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever. On the day that you stood aloof, on the day that strangers carried off his wealth, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem. You were like one of them. Now, what's going on in those verses is God is bringing an accusation against Edom that they have committed violence against their kinfolk. They knew who Jacob was. They knew who Israel was. They knew that they were God's chosen nation. They knew enough about God and the God that they followed. They knew better than all the other nations, Assyria, Babylon, and they received their due judgment from God as well. But the Edomites had even more information, and yet they did what they did, and God's judgment is there to judge them. But I want you to notice it was not only was God's judgment coming due to their violence toward their kinfolk, toward Israel, but also notice verse 11, on the day that you stood aloof, on the day when Israel was facing such abuse by Babylon that some of the people of Edom just kind of stood aloof. They were complacent. They saw this other nation doing wrong, and instead of maybe standing up for their relatives, they decided to say, you know what, that's kind of their business. We're going to let them do what they do. And they're judged for their complacency. And so, church, we should be mindful of the truth that Obadiah speaks here, that just because you and I may not be taking part in someone else's sin or what someone else is doing, that we shouldn't be complacent and say, you know what, I'm not doing it, therefore, you know, I'm good. I'm just going to kind of keep in my own little space, in my own little world. That's not the way of the Christian. If you see someone being abused, you step in. You can't say, okay, just because I'm not the abuser, that I'm free and clear. No. We are called to step in. Listen to what Paul says over in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, beginning in verse 11. He says, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. So, it's not enough for us to say, you know what, this other person here may be racist, and he or she may mistreat someone of a different race, but I'm not doing that, therefore, you know, I'm good. No, we don't take part in racism, we expose when there is racism or any other sin, okay? Take another one, abortion. We may say, you know what, I haven't had an abortion, I don't intend to have an abortion, but we must speak up for the unborn and protect their lives as well. And so not taking part in unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Paul continues, for it is shameful even to speak of the things that they, the wicked, do. Let's see if I can get my page turned here. They do in secret, but when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. And we're children of the light. We expose unfruitful works of darkness. We don't take part in them, we instead expose them. And so when we think about the book of Obadiah and the God who watches over his children, because he is the God who watches over his children, you and I should be the ones who watch over others. Watch over them in protection, watch over them in love. Going back to what the Israelites could have been thinking at the time, is God watching over us? Does he care? And the answer is he absolutely cares. He absolutely is watching. And the book of Obadiah is there to remind the folks there in that period of time, and us as well, that He is watching, that He is taking into account, that the kingdoms of this world will ultimately fail. And as he wraps up the book in verse 21, Saviors shall go up to Mount Zion to rule Mount Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. There'll only be one kingdom standing at the end of time. That will be God's kingdom, of which, church, we are citizens, of which we should be watchful of those who are being abused, those who are being taken advantage of, to expose those works of darkness with the light and with the love of Jesus. That's the book of Obadiah. Church, I am so grateful for you. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll continue to read your Old Testament throughout the rest of this year. Look forward to being with you the next time we see each other. God bless you. Love you, church.